Welcome, everyone, to Three Sides Sports Talk. I'm Todd Kleinheinz, alongside, as always, Jerry Sue and Jeff Kerpinski. We want to thank everyone, as always, for downloading, listening, and subscribing. Also, we want to say that this is the final podcast of 2020. And while many people are ready to push 2020 out the door, there were some good things that came out of this year. And I think we're going to all discuss a few of those probably in our final thoughts, but later on, because there are some things, and if you listen to the podcast at all, they most likely, you can guess, center around football, beer, entertainment, things like that. So we will have a few things to be thankful for from 2020. And before we get started on this podcast, I want to rewind real quick to something that came up last podcast, which I was very excited about, but didn't really grasp until I re-listened. And that was Jerry saying, I was wrong about Deshaun Watson. And not because it's always fun to hear Jerry say he was wrong, but I think that is the foundation of what I wanted this podcast to be. And that is some accountability, where put yourself out there with a suggestion, an idea, take, and if it doesn't go, be the first one to admit it and say, whoa, blew that one. Because there are 99.9% of the people are out there ready to tell you that they knew Patrick Mahomes was going to be the best quarterback coming out of that draft, or they knew Deshaun Watson. You don't hear anyone saying, I thought Mitch Trubisky was going to be the best one, but we all know that those people were out there that year. There were people out there saying, this kid's got it, but you don't hear that. So upon further review of the last podcast, that really stood out to me because I was excited to hear, hey, I didn't think that was going to happen, and I've changed my tune, and here's why. And that's what I want this podcast really to be about, that you're not afraid to go out there. You're not afraid to put forth a logical, smart, intelligent take, but if it doesn't go that way, own up to it and move on. And I think the listeners are going to appreciate that, because you have too many people always waving their banner and patting themselves on the back of all the things they got right, and you never hear anything that they got wrong. So in that vein, I guess I will be the one to say, clearly I was wrong about the Niners making the playoffs. Clearly I was wrong about thinking Shanahan was going to just put Kittle up on the shelf for the last two games, as we saw George get in against Arizona. And I will say he was, in my mind, the clear MVP of that game. Not because of his catches, but because he took defenders with him. As you saw on the Jeff Wilson touchdown, Wilson was all alone and three guys were following Kittle. His presence alone, I think, goes back to what Jerry's overall take on the Niners has been, that when healthy, we can have a quarterback run Kyle's system and be very successful. And I think you saw that just by having Kittle on the field. In a game, the Cardinals had to win. That wasn't a game that the Cardinals just needed to throw away. So I'll kick it off and say, I love seeing Kittle on the field because he ended up being healthy. Things would have obviously changed had he gone down grabbing his foot. But I really was a fan of seeing Kittle, and I didn't think they'd put him out there, but they did.
Yeah, I mean, you are the eternal optimist, as is Jeff, in terms of these type of things. Me, I'm not like that. So, yay, whoopee, we got 6 wins. 6-10, 5-11, 4-12. Who cares? They're all the same in this family of suckage as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I know players, they don't see it that way. They play to win. I get it. And they probably don't give a crap about the draft. But where we pick in the draft does matter. And unfortunately, with the meaningless win, they moved down in the order. So, but at least, their imprudent decision, as I said before, to play George Kittle in basically what amounts to be a glorified preseason game didn't come back to haunt them. So that's good. And I wasn't the only one holding my breath every single time he touched the ball. Knock on wood if you're with me.
Yep. Yes. Jeff, you live down in Arizona. You've got to you got to be kind of in enemy territory. What's the What was the word down there, and how'd you feel?
Not much of a word. I mean, I think all the Cardinal fans down here, obviously, are pulling for the Cardinals. But my feeling was, I was scared just like Jerry was every time he caught the ball, and not. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm always like that with him. It seems like so. I need to get over that. Like every time he gets the ball, it's like, oh, get up. Shit. But again, it was meaningless play. I mean, is he going to play this week? Probably. And then we're going to be doing the same thing again, because if anybody gets hurt this week, like, ooh, right? Whether it's, I guess some of these guys aren't playing already, right? Like Trent Williams, I guess, and Ayuk, they are not playing. Their season's over. But yeah, you don't want to see anybody get hurt at this point. But I think, obviously the players don't care about tanking. We see that with the Jets, right? I mean, I know we're talking about the Niners, but I mean, how stupid are the Jets? They just gave up the next 10 years of their franchise, potentially, right? But yeah, I mean, players don't care. And that's one thing that I think, myself included, needs to get over the fact that they don't care. And even though I think maybe they should a little bit, they don't care. Or whether or not the organization cares, they're just playing to win, which is fine. I've said that before. You want to establish a winning culture, but so I don't know if it even matters for us a little bit as far as draft picks, whether you've got 4 wins, 5 wins, 6 wins. You kind of just want to win. You just want to win the games. Whether that hurt us a little bit, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, because I don't know if they're willing to give up what is suggested to give up. All we're hearing is they're going to keep Jimmy. So I don't know.
Before we jump into that, 2 other people that I'd like to mention coming out of the Arizona game that surprised me. One was Ahkello Witherspoon. I thought for sure he was playing, his final games in the Scarlet and Gold, and he was out there and he looked good. Not even just serviceable. He looked good. He looked like a guy who you thought was going to be the quality of a 3rd-round corner. He showed his length. He showed good ball skills, and the fact of the matter is that I didn't think that was going to happen. So him and the overall defensive line containing Kyler Murray a little bit. Kyler still hurt the Niners, as he has done in all of his starts in his career. But the fact that on occasion they pinned him in the pocket and forced some questionable decisions was kind of the big thing. So those 2, one position group and one player stood out to me.
Well, I think Witherspoon has always had some ability, which is why they probably kept him instead of, DJ Reed, when they could have probably cut Witherspoon and somehow found a place for DJ Reed on the roster. And we saw flashes of it last season early on before he got hurt. So I don't know what the deal is with him. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's a preparation thing. I don't know if he gets a little complacent, thinking he's made it type of thing. So I'm not ready to buy in on Witherspoon. Just as I'm not necessarily willing on buying in on how great the Niners D was in this last game. They played solid and they got the win, but I feel like the onus of the Arizona's failure was more on Cliff Kingsbury, the game plan that he called. I don't think he really took advantage of the players that the Niners were missing. Particularly, I felt like he held Kyler Murray back. I felt like Murray probably could have made a lot of plays with his legs, but they were possibly just trying to protect him, like on those, especially some of those key 4th downs where instead of running it, he threw it. I'm not really sure what the game plan was for Arizona, but I felt like, I mean, you can't tell me that our defense, as it is currently constituted, ravaged by injuries, is better and more capable of containing Kyler Murray than when we had Nick Bosa and Dee Ford and all those other guys.
Yeah, probably not. But I will say the speed that the Niner linebackers showed was noticeable. Kyler's a special talent, and when he gets out on the edge or when he tucks it and run, it's going to be difficult for anyone. But I think the linebacking core and their speed was on display. And whether Kyler's hurt or not, hey, let me tell you how much I feel bad for a team who has an injury or 2 going on right now. But I think I think the speed was part of the idea, and we'll never know what Kingsbury called or wanted to call or how hurt he was, but it was one of those things that I think you saw what everyone wanted to see is this is what we could be. This is what we could do. So,
I mean, I know they had a big game and a big win against Philly the week prior. So I was really I was, and they still had a lot to play for. So I was just surprised at how flat they came out.
Yeah, I would say I was chalking it up as a loss just based on what was on the line for them and where we were at mentally coming off of all those losses. Real quick on Ahkello Witherspoon, he's shown flashes. I don't know. I think it's more of his consistency, and I thought maybe he was in the doghouse, and then he got a chance. And so I'm not sure what his contract. He's unrestricted, I believe. So, I mean, I don't know how much I'm throwing at him right now. Who I was impressed with was Verrett. I mean, I think he's really shown a lot this year. And even I think I might have mentioned in previous podcasts, I don't know how much I'm willing to give him based on his injury history, but I think maybe he's someone we have to lock up now instead of Sherman, because I think he's shown he's had a pretty good year. And whether you throw some money at Witherspoon, potentially either that or E-Man, and I still think we need to get somebody, whether it's high in the draft, free agent, combination of both. I agree with Todd on the linebackers. That they really impressed. I thought they were during the game all over the place. I kept talking to myself, saying, "Man, look at Fred Warner just killing it out there," and Greenlaw just making like tackle after tackle. I mean, they were doing a hell of a job. We still have to address obviously the safety situation too going into next year, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, but one trade they made, right? One great trade they made was letting go of Quan Alexander, because clearly Dre Greenlaw is ready to take over that spot.
And now Quan's hurt.
Yeah. You know, you can leave the Niners, but that injury bug will not leave you, apparently.
Right.
Well, we covered the Cardinal game without even mentioning C.J. Beathard, the guy who took all the snaps.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
That is, I was just going to say, and that's a good thing. It's much like you don't know who your long snapper is until he gets called for holding or something like that.
Or he gets on the COVID list.
Yeah. So the fact that we aren't talking about CJ in a game that the Niners won is kind of what you want, or what I think people want from their backup quarterback. And again, we saw this out of Nick Mullins. He comes in, he plays well. When he doesn't turn the ball over, you start thinking, this guy's a competent NFL backup quarterback. And I think that's kind of what CJ showed, that when you run plays specifically for him, and when the running game is as devastating as it was, and you don't turn the ball over, Kyle's system will protect you from having to, make the long outside the numbers throws. So your thoughts on CJ, and where do we go? Jerry?
I mean, there's still a lot of throws that he left out on the field. I don't know. I texted you guys and showing you specific times when I'm like, why, what was he looking at? And at the same time, I mean, we still have a problem with right tackle. McGlinchey just cannot handle the outside rush from what I've seen. So,
hold on. Let's real quick. Kyle held his press conference today. Someone asked him about McGlinchey, and he said McGlinchey will be here next year, which means they will be picking up his fifth-year option. Is that Kyle coach speak, or does Kyle believe that? And if so, what are you going to do? So that's just something that popped into my head because Kyle talked about it today. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's like everything else, right? Like with Jimmy, he said the same thing with Jimmy, and that's exactly how he should make it sound, right? That's exactly how he should be playing it. He needs to make it sound like all these guys, like Jimmy, is still their guy, right? Because in terms of Jimmy, he wants to be able to get the maximum value in case they decide to trade him in the offseason.
Has there been any talk about Jimmy playing this week? I haven't heard.
There's no chance. There's no chance. I think George Kittle might play left tackle this week.
Yeah. Well,
he might have to.
I mean, he really helped, I think, then in some of the run game, or maybe even not really the pass, but maybe sometime being on that side with McGlinchey, right? He's a help to him. So maybe that's masked when George is out there. You don't see it as much. even though there were plenty of plays when you watch McGlinchey and it's like, what is this guy doing? He's just getting burned on the edge. So I don't know if can be moved inside. I don't know if that's really where he would fit. So I'm not sure what they're going to do there or what other options they have. But
well, maybe they try Brunskill at left tackle this week. I don't know if they have any other guys who can play center that are healthy and not on the COVID list.
Or put McGlinchey at left and see how he does. I don't know.
If Brunskill can play left tackle, maybe they put him at right tackle, kick McGlinchey in at guard. But yeah. I'm not sure what's wrong with McGlinchey. But even when he was at Notre Dame, I was a little concerned about how he could deal with speed on the edge.
Yeah.
And that's his problem, is speed around the edge, because he grades out and is noticeable in the run game, blocking guys 5, 7, 10 yards downfield and mauling them. The problem is, yes, in the NFL, those speed rushers are one step and gone. And if you can't kick out there and get in the way and protect your quarterback for the 3 seconds needed, boy, it's rough. And I don't know if Kyle's system just doesn't call for having that blocking tight end over there or keeping a running back in to chip, but that will have to be addressed if they're going to keep McGlinchey at right tackle.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they will address, the entirety of the line. It's just hard to say if I can really see that happening, or if they're just going to keep him out there and keep at it and just hope the team gets better by being healthier. And it just, masks that. But I'm not sure. I'm hopeful, but I don't know if I can see him doing it.
But getting back to your question or the topic about CJ Beathard, I just hope that he's updated his will, because this week might get ugly.
Yeah, no, I was impressed with CJ's play as well. He didn't have to do a lot or maybe miss some throws, but I mean, he did okay. I was happy for him.
Well, it just gives the Niners another question regarding the quarterback room for next year.
Exactly.
But let's talk about something Jerry and I kind of discussed earlier in the week, just kind of as a one-off, and that's what do you think Kyle wants in a quarterback? I believe that Kyle kind of puts people in 3 buckets. One being your pocket passers, your Kirk Cousins, your Phillip Rivers, your guys who they drop back, they have a little mobility to move inside the pocket, but they're pretty much pocket passers. Then you have your mobile quarterbacks, your Josh Allens, your Patrick Mahomes, guys who, Russell Wilson, are constantly on the move, but staying behind the line, always looking to pass first. Pass, and then run. And then you have your running quarterbacks like Lamar and Kyler, who, if anything breaks down or their first read isn't there, they are instantly using their physical abilities and getting out and running. And I think Kyle does not even consider anyone who gets put into you're a running quarterback bucket. He doesn't even want to try and either break that habit or tame that wild horse and get him in there regardless of his physical gifts. And I just don't think there are enough pocket passers, which I think Kyle likes, as his affinity for Kirk Cousins is, brought up, routinely. So any thoughts on what you think Kyle wants in a quarterback, and how does that match what might be available?
Well, I mean, I think the quarterback with mobility and the ability to extend plays and improvise when things go off script, I think that's the ideal kind of quarterback in today's game, which is why I suggested that they should sign Marcus Mariota. But I think even that type of quarterback will be hard for Kyle to stomach, because he doesn't want guys who freelance and use their movement abilities to make plays. I think Kyle believes that his system will scheme guys open, and it's the QB's job to read the defense and deliver the ball on time, which makes me think that Kyle's favorite type of QB is like the clothing retail store I used to work at back in my youth called Structure, because Kyle is partial to the pocket quarterback, as you mentioned, who can operate within the structure of his offense, which isn't terrible, but those guys really need to be on their P's and Q's in terms of game awareness, quickly processing what the coverage is, manipulating the defense with his eyes and pump fakes, and then zipping that ball to the target on time and having the ability to throw guys open, as they say. So, hey, those guys can still work. I mean, if, Joe Montana or Tom Brady walked through that door, they'd still be just as good, right now, obviously. So, but as far as finding that guy, that's just a tough thing, right? Because it's tough enough just to find a good quarterback, but then you're narrowing the scope of the kind of quarterback that you want to employ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all very well said and very well put, and I agree with pretty much all of that. I think that's what Kyle wants, is that Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins guy. But I think, like you mentioned, the league is leaning more towards the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes guy, and maybe just give that a little bit extra, right? A little bit extra, extend the play, find a guy, run if you need to. I don't think Jimmy's that guy necessarily. I don't know who that is going forward, because I don't see Kirk being available or either of the Matts, really. I don't really see how that would come to be. So the perfect guy is then to draft Zach Wilson.
Well, okay. Nice segue into that. Now, there's been discussion. What would it take, just going on the old traditional trade chart that the NFL has, these draft simulators? You weren't quite ready to pull the trigger on sending your number one pick for Matt Stafford. Are you ready to pull 2 number ones and 2 number twos to go up to get Zach Wilson?
Well, that's the question. Well, to me, so you're just flipping ones, so whatever. But then next year's one, right? Then the 2 and the 3, and then next year's 2 and 3. That seems like a lot. I don't know if that's what it takes.
Well, that's about what – I mean, that seems to be the going rate when Washington –
maybe a 1 and a 2 or a 1 and a 3.
Well,
okay.
When Washington went up to get RG3, it took 3 1s and a 2. When the Rams went up to get Goff, 2 1s, 2 2s. So if you're in 5 to 15 range and you want to get up to number 2, which by all accounts you probably would have to do. I mean, unless you start feeling that Justin Fields is going to go number 2, or you feel the Jets are going to stand pat with Darnold and use their own number 2 on an offensive tackle. Maybe you can, get down to 3 or 4, but you got to be ready to part with, your number 1 and your number 1 and 2 picks over the next 2 years, which, to borrow Jerry's phrase, is not all that, exciting when you know how many free agents and how much depth you need. So I'm not ready to do that. I really enjoyed watching Zach Wilson. I'm sure you guys have seen articles come out already talking about his character concerns, and then teammates coming out and defending him, and all those types of things are starting to come out. But regardless of that, I don't think he's a Johnny Manziel. He doesn't have the red flags of this guy is just out of control. But you're handing over the keys to a playoff-ready team to a guy who hasn't had that many starts and is ready to, can he do that? I mean, I go back to Jerry's point of, is Fitzmagic available? Because let me tell you what I thought about him on Saturday night playing against the Raiders.
Right.
Or is Mariota available?
Right.
Does Josh Rosen, and we can get into Josh Rosen, because Josh Rosen is 23 years old. I mean, it's conceivable he's the same age as many of these guys coming out. Yeah. So is age just a factor that we're blowing off Rosen because he kind of got put into 2 difficult situations, or is he a legit contender for the number 1 spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tough is that, as we've seen throughout all these drafts, it's just really tough to figure out and forecast who's going to develop, right? With Josh Allen, everybody had their qualms about whether or not he would be accurate enough at the NFL level. He certainly had the physical tools, but even when he was taken at as high as he was taken, I think number 7 overall, or within the top 10 for sure, people weren't positive. And with Patrick Mahomes, that seemed like a big reach. I mean, here's a guy with all the athletic talent in the world, but when he was at Texas Tech, man, he was so just I would say he played out of control. I mean, you even heard Tyreek Hill say that when he first arrived at Chiefs camp, they're like, we drafted that guy? So, and so having said that, you just don't know. And guys like Zach Wilson, as much as I like him, I just don't think that the Niners would back up the Brinks truck of draft picks and mortgage their future and give up so many draft picks because, they just have so many aging vets or free agents and positions which they have holes to fill. But going back to your Josh Rosen topic, you said, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, he's only 23 years of age, and he could have conceivably been a quarterback in this draft, right? And we've seen some quarterbacks that are older come out in the draft. And if he was, I'd say he'd definitely be a top 10 pick. Because remember, when he came out, the narrative was that he's the most polished, pro-ready QB in that class. So just because he was dealt a terrible hand and thrown into the fire behind two terrible teams with Arizona and Miami at the time, and that shouldn't change the potential that Rosen still has. So to me, we already have our quote-unquote first-round QB in the room. And then I can see the third quarterback being C.J. Beathard, or maybe drafting a guy like Kyle Trask in the middle rounds, or even signing an undrafted quarterback like Ian Book.
Well, with that scenario, who's your one? Are you sticking with Jimmy when you're saying Rosen too?
Well, so if they can re-sign Trent Williams, Jason Barrett, Kyle Juszczyk, K1 Williams, the restricted free agents, Mosley, Brunskill, Jones, and if Jimmy's going to restructure his deal and can be squeezed into that mix, then I can foresee the Niners keeping Jimmy because it seems that they're at least comfortable with him. But, if not, then I'd see them trading Jimmy and bringing in a veteran on the cheap to be a bridge quarterback like Ryan Fitzpatrick, or maybe even the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, just to hold down the fort while they mentor a guy like Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I think the Zach Wilson angle is interesting. I think it'd be neat to do it if you weren't giving up so much, but I don't see them doing that either. I can't picture them throwing everything into the fire, saying, all right, we'll go get this guy. Because I still think they value draft picks and want to get some more pieces with those draft picks, especially if they think, our window is open, let's go get a corner or let's go get another pass rusher. So you don't just give all these picks away, right? But at the same time, what you guys, I think what Todd or whoever was saying last week, draft picks are, who knows, right? So maybe it is worth giving up a bunch of draft picks. But then at the same time, the quarterbacks that have been drafted, some are good and some are not 50%. So, I mean, it's such a, I mean, I guess you could argue it either way, right? Give up a bunch of draft picks, you don't need them, right?
I don't even think it's 50%.
Well, right, but it was close to that. But yeah, so I guess you could argue either way and then get, throw a bunch of draft picks and try to get a guy, or say, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to stick with this guy. A guy like Mariota might be a perfect solution to that, or stick with Jimmy and see what you have in Josh and get these guys healthy and get some more help. Maybe that's a better way to do it.
What I do know is that they flirted with a 43-year-old Tom Brady the season after Jimmy was at his best. So I can't imagine Shanahan and Lynch not at least exploring their options, especially after Jimmy missed the majority of this season due to injury again and didn't even play well when he was healthy. And also keep this in mind that with Robert Saleh expected to land a head coaching gig, we'll also be competing with him to sign a lot of our key free agent as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Specifically on the defensive side, you're talking about your Emmanuel Mosley, you're talking about your Witherspoon, you're talking about all the guys who, have been backing Saleh for, a couple of years now, talking about how great he is as a coach and supporting him and pushing him as a head coach. Mm-hmm. Well, now that those guys might be free agents, is Saleh's new team going to dangle some money at them, even if it's a little bit overpriced, to bring in his guys, kind of like Kyle did, when he came to the Niners? He was signing his guys to probably what was a little bit over market price or a little bit more, but that's what Kyle wanted. And I can see Saleh doing that same thing. So
even our offensive free agents, because Saleh will probably take Mike LaFleur with him to be his offensive coordinator. So
yeah. Well, I mean, so one thing that, and we've been going on the assumption that Saleh is definitely gone. After looking at some of the openings, I still think he's probably gone, but I also don't think that there's going to be as many firings as I previously thought. I thought we were going to have upwards of 10 or 11, and I just don't see that right now. And entertain me for a moment, if you will. And what are your thoughts? Give me a percentage on these guys getting fired. Is anyone in the NFC West, Kingsbury, McVay, Shanahan, or Carroll, going anywhere?
No.
Well, probably not Kingsbury, but if something really good comes about, maybe.
Well, give me a percent. Give me a percentage that he is not the coach of the Cardinals next year.
I think there's it's low. It's probably 20-30% chance he gets fired.
All right. So, Jeff, any all those guys, 0? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we already know the Falcons are without a coach. Now they might just stick with Raheem Morris, but for the sake of the exercise, we'll say that's an opening. So that's one. You're talking Matt Rule, Sean Payton, and Bruce Arians in the NFC South.
I could see possibly if Tom Brady does not want Bruce Arians as his head coach, I could see maybe him getting Josh McDaniels to go down there and join him.
You're talking 20.
That's my surprise pick.
That's your surprise pick?
Yeah.
My slight surprise pick would have been Peyton. And only because he's only signed through 2023. By all accounts, Breeze is done after this year. I definitely think if the Saints were to get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, the percentage goes up. Is Peyton going to want to do a rebuild? And I don't think Taysom Hill is his answer at quarterback, nor do I think Jameis Winston is. So they would have to do something drastic. So I don't think it would be – I think Peyton would be my surprise pick as to – not that he's going to get fired. He would retire and move on and do media or whatever. Jeff, anyone in the South?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll stay put like that.
The North is a little bit open. The Lions obviously have their opening, which is where everyone is projecting Saleh to go to. Matt LaFleur, not going anywhere with the Packers, I wouldn't imagine. Mike Zimmer is an interesting name. I thought he would have been kind of a guy, but he just signed a 3-year extension before this season. So I don't think he's going anywhere. And Matt Nagy, who almost was assuredly out the door, has the Bears in possession of a playoff spot. So I would lean no. I'd give Nagy 50-50.
Yeah, I thought Nagy was a goner for sure earlier, but he seems to be safe now. I think he saved his job.
And then over in the NFC East, you're talking Joe Judge, you're talking Doug Peterson, Ron Rivera, and Mike McCarthy. I think I said on a podcast probably 2 or 3 episodes ago, I thought McCarthy was a candidate to, be one and done, especially if Jerry starts getting impatient. But I think that's kind of been overblown. I think the storm has quieted around Dallas a little bit. I think they will bring back Dak, whether it be franchise tagged again or give him his contract. I don't think Judge is going anywhere. I do think the Eagles are going to have a tough time bringing back Peterson and Carson Wentz. Just that seems to be the butting of the heads. And considering Wentz's contract and length of contract, I think Peterson might be out the door.
I think Peterson is safe only because they're only a couple of years removed from winning their Super Bowl. I think the narrative is that Wentz has been the issue as far as whether it's in his head, the shadow of Nick Foles, or the pressure of having Jalen Hurts looking over his shoulder. So I don't know if they pin the struggles of this season on Peterson. I feel like he's safe, and I thought McCarthy was a goner as well early this year, but it looks like they might actually win the NFC East. So I think he's safe too.
Jeff, anyone in the East you think is?
Yeah, no, I think maybe just Peterson 50-50, but I think they got to figure that out with Wentz more so than with Peterson. So
Quickly, just looking at the NFC side of it, there's two, maybe three openings. You're talking about the two that we know of, the Falcons and the Lions, and then maybe a Peterson. And in the off chance you're going to get a surprise like Peyton or Arians type of thing. So you're only looking at two. And then quickly in the AFC, Andy Reid's not going anywhere. John Gruden's not going anywhere. And then you got Vic Fangio and Anthony Lynn.
I could see a potential there for both of those guys.
What's your potential?
No, potential that they'll be fired. So I don't know if I'll go 50%. Whatever, 50%. Maybe.
Right. Okay.
I think both those teams will be firing their head coaches.
So
I think the Chargers should have been a lot better than they were this year, and I think a lot of that falls at the feet of the head coach, perhaps mismanaging some of those games. And I think just the Broncos might be cleaning house. I don't even know if John Elway is safe.
So what do you say? 100%, both those guys gone.
For me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. What? Not being a Charger fan, or I'll ask you. You said you thought their record should be, but what should their record have been?
I mean, I didn't go down their entire schedule, so I don't know. But I just remember watching some of their games. I'm like, man, they let that one slip away, and I felt like I said that on multiple occasions this year. So at least 9-7, 8-8, 9-7.
So if
they should have been. I mean, given how good Justin Herbert has been, they should have been in the playoff. They should have been in the playoff chase or the playoff, picture.
So if they win this week, they're 7-9. So you're talking. They should have been 8-8, 9-6. That's only a 2-game difference, really. So it's not like you thought, they should have been 9-7.
The same thing has been going on throughout his entire, tenure there, where I felt like the Chargers. Go ahead, Jeff.
Same thing's been going on with the Chargers. I mean, for a long time, right? They're always. They should have won this many games, or they should have won a couple more here or there. And I think, like right now, it's just going to go back to the coach. I think.
And not only that, but remember, they're not the San Diego Chargers anymore.
Right.
They're the LA Chargers. So being in a bigger market, I know. I think I mentioned this to you, Todd, before. I'm like, do they go after a big fish like Jim Harbaugh?
Right.
I just remember they could, but again, that's just I think I have an 80% chance that Lynn is gone. I have a 40% chance that Fangio is gone. So I still think the Chargers have underachieved, and the opportunity to bring in, whether it be a big name or someone who is very dynamic to pair with Herbert would be a great opportunity for the Chargers to take the big step. So
maybe they get your guy Sean Payton.
They could get my guy Sean Payton. Moving over to the AFC South, Romeo Crennel and the Texans. We're calling that an opening. And Doug Marrone. Does anyone believe Doug Marrone is not fired 5 minutes after the last game of the season from Jacksonville?
I thought he should have been fired last time.
So we're on board.
This year you have to fire him, right? Like this guy can't. I don't know. Yeah.
He was the sacrificial lamb this season. He was the tank for Trevor.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you got Frank Reich and Mike Vrabel, who I don't think anyone would believe are going anywhere. But you got two more openings. John Harbaugh, Zach Taylor, Kevin Stefanski, Mike Tomlin, anyone in the North?
No. Again, earlier in the season, I thought maybe Zach Taylor could be on the chopping block. He still might be. I don't know. It depends on how they feel about Zach Taylor's match, or how much better Joe Burrows can be if they brought in his guy Joe Brady. Like if I'm Cincinnati, I might be looking at Joe Brady and think, hey, let's get him in.
I think Taylor gets a reprieve only because Burrow was hurt. And there was some excitement early on in the season, even though the wins weren't there, that Burrow legitimately looked like a franchise quarterback. So I think Taylor gets a reprieve.
I'll go 50-50 there.
Any thoughts on it? I mean, is another surprise for me, or would be John Harbaugh. It seems that his message has kind of been getting stale over the last couple of years, and they seem to be the perennial, we're pretty good during the regular season, and we fade. And it's the old Bill Walsh philosophy of after you've been there 10 years, the organization needs a new voice. So I don't think it'll happen, but that's one that I got on my radar as I wouldn't be shocked. I put that at 20%.
Yeah, I think John Harbaugh's safe. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I guess unless something goes completely awry during the playoffs, maybe something weird might happen. But I think
what has to go awry? I mean, it's first of all, they got to win this week just to get into the playoffs. And if they get into the playoffs, they're going to be playing a number 2 or 3 seed. So you're talking about they're playing Buffalo or they're playing Pittsburgh. I mean,
I think the Ravens beat the Bengals. I think the Ravens beat the Bengals this weekend, right? They're playing Bengals, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but I'm just the fact that you have to go into week 17 and you have to win to get into the playoffs. So you're going to win that.
But this year's been weird. This year they had that whole COVID situation.
I agree.
And Lamar's cramps. I mean, come on.
Okay, well, you just said it would take something weird in the playoffs. But what's
weird as in like they would have to be like utterly embarrassed. Like they'll lose in a very embarrassing fashion.
You don't think Josh Allen and the Bills could do that to the Ravens?
Possibly. But again, that's what I'm saying. I don't see it happening, but they would have to literally fall on their face and get shut out.
Why? Well, I don't think that's a fall on their face. And I mean, we can get you're squeaking into the playoffs. It's not like you're expected to win. And if you're going up against a strong team, if you get mollywopped, hey, but we'll see. We got basically Black Monday is 4 to 5 days away. So, and then in the East, Sean McDermott safe, Brian Flores safe, Bill Belichick.
I don't know about that guy.
And then Adam Gase. Again, it'll be a race between him and Malone.
Adam Gase is the wild card because he should have been fired week 3, right? Like he's still there, so maybe he doesn't get fired.
Well, I think that will be the race. Which press release comes out first? Gase is done with the Jets, or Marone is done with the Jags?
I'm sure Gase will come out first because he failed to get Trevor.
Yeah.
Let's just 30 seconds. I know it's seemingly blasphemy to say Bill Belichick won't be back, and I'm not saying he's fired, but he just, I mean, I guess we're just assuming that the guys who opted out are coming back. I guess we're assuming that he finds himself a quarterback, maybe Jimmy,
I'm guessing he's going to trade for Jimmy, and then he'll be right back in the mix again. So and all of his players that opted out will be back.
Okay. I mean,
what do you think he was going to leave? Like he's going to get fired, or he's going to just retire? Because he ain't leaving on these terms. There's no way.
No. Yeah, but this might be the best. I mean, this might be in for another year or two. I mean, this could be.
He's a lifer. He's a lifer, and Robert Kraft's.
I agree. I mean, I think so. But again, he had such a run of excellence, and now it wasn't a slow slope down to mediocrity. He crashed into a wall because he didn't have a quarterback and because of so many other things. And I just don't know if he's looking at his team going, Jared Stidham? Yeah, we got him. Or we're gonna back up the Brinks truck and go trade up for a quarterback type thing. He just seems like, and maybe it's just his demeanor, just the crotchety old man. He just does not want to go through, he just wants to coach football, and he doesn't want to have to teach these guys how to be professionals, and that's my only thought on grumpy old Bill.
Yeah. Maybe Bill gets desperate enough and offers his first round pick to bring Jimmy back.
I don't think that, but I think maybe he could possibly trade for Jimmy and then maybe draft maybe that guy from Florida or something like that in the first.
Good. So just through that exercise, you're only looking at 8, 9 openings. And that's throwing one of our surprise picks, kind of in there. So of all those guys, so Saleh, again, will probably be on the short list. And I think, all the accounts and reports are, Detroit wants him, type of thing. So I guess that, if he reciprocates the interest, that could be a slam dunk. But we also have seen, you mentioned your buddy Brady, not Tom, becoming a head coach. We're talking about Eric Bieniemy being available. You're talking about any number of, retread coaches that will no doubt get interviews. So
I think Dable from the Bills, maybe.
Yeah. You're talking, and Jerry's best friend, Greg Roman, I'm sure will get an interview. So there's going to be kind of those names that you've heard routinely over the past couple of years, and it will be interesting to see where the carousel goes. I just like doing this, much like we did before. We put our thoughts out there. Now we're going to see which one of these guys, because I can't wait till next week when Anthony Lynn has his job and Jerry's got to go, I was wrong. No,
I'm going to say the Chargers are wrong.
No, that's not the game we play here. That is not the game. So, but we're starting to push time. But anyways, I wanted to get to a couple things. One, which was a listener-inspired question, which is always fun, and that being the NFL neighborhood. If you were in a neighborhood with NFL players, a couple current players, a couple retired players, coaches and owners, and we'll save this because I want you guys to put some thought into it for next week. Who would you want to be your neighbor and why? And I'll give you 2 of mine. One being a current guy, that being, I think, is almost a universal pick for probably many, and that's George Kittle. The guy looks like he just likes to have fun. Plus, he looks like the guy who, when you need to chop down a tree, he's going to come over and help you, and he's going to do that. He seems like that type of neighbor. The second person would be Drew Bledsoe, because what did Drew Bledsoe do in his second career? He became a winemaker. He owns vineyards. Can you imagine having the guy who has a vineyard as your neighbor? Nothing like having, hey, I'll bring the wine to the dinner party. So, and so just kind of those were 2 of my guys. If you have something you'd like to throw out, please. But again, because
this is current, like you're talking current. Like I'm not jumping into your DeLorean.
No,
and
two
up
current.
1.21 gigawatts and going back in time. Like this is current. Like so, I can't go become like Roger Craig's neighbor and back in 1991 and go, dude, hold on to the ball.
No, you can have Roger Craig as a neighbor, but it's 54-year-old Roger Craig. Okay. So you're not. Yeah, you're two current players, 2 retired players, and 2 affiliated sports people, owners, logistics coordinators, whoever you'd like.
Right. Sounds good. I think we need more time on that.
So
I just want to throw out a name.
You just want to be neighbors with George Kittle, so he'll take it to WrestleMania.
Right.
Well, again, how good would
right.
those be? Again, you're talking about a guy who has, fun interests, we'll say. Fun interests. Yeah. And we talked about it or teased it at the beginning of the show, and that's the fact that as our last podcast of 2020, and we're ready to push this year right out the door as quickly as we can. Looking back, there are a couple things that I enjoyed. I got out of 2020. One, we'll start with the Niners. Fred Warner is a legit all-pro, top-tier, no doubt about it, linebacker. And he's in the mold of, he's almost Patrick Willis meets Navarro Bowman, because he's the leader in the middle that Willis was, but he's got the speed and athleticism that Bowman had. And the fact that we have him, and I'm sure we've thrown the cliche out a number of times, the Niners are going to have to back up the Brinks truck for him, and I'm all for that. I'm absolutely fine with them doing that. So seeing Warner blossom from a third-round draft pick, a guy who had never played middle linebacker before in college, to what he has become now is outstanding. The second thing is, as you can tell by, or maybe you can't tell by, my photo for our YouTube watchers, the photo is Firestone Brewery. Got a chance to go visit Firestone about 4 or 5 months ago. It's outstanding beer. I love it. I mean, there's everything that they have, from their sours to their IPAs to their stouts to their porters. Everything I've tasted is great. And so I'm a fan of Firestone, and I'm glad 2020 brought that to me. And finally, the last thing is entertainment. Have you seen Money Heist on Netflix?
Nope.
Because if you haven't seen Money Heist, that is my gift to you, to go watch that, because I had never heard of it, didn't know about it. Someone suggested, give it a shot. I burned through those like, a kid in a candy store, all the episodes, and the fact that it's, out there. So those are just a few of the things that 2020 brought me that I was happy about. So, Jerry.
Well, I agree with you and your Fred Warner assessment. I think our linebacking crew, including the coach, actually, D'Amico Ryans, I think that's all good. I mean, between Warner as well as Greenlaw and even Al Shahir, I think they're all solid. I'm just grateful from a non-sports standpoint that that you, Jeff, and my friends, my loved ones, they've all been pretty safe throughout this entire ordeal in terms of the pandemic. And for me, I'm just thankful for, everyone in the world who's doing their best to take care of each other, whether it's our military or law enforcement, the frontline workers, especially those in the medical field. I just want the new year to bring back a sense of normalcy, which I know this podcast has done. So I want to thank you guys. I got my champagne here. Cheers to you.
Knock on wood.
To a great new year. That's all I have.
Nice. Jeff?
Yeah, as far as the Niners go, I was racking my brains trying to think. I mean, yeah, Warner had a good year, and some of these guys, Ayuk seems to be a good pick. I'm not sure what my takeaway is. It's been a really terrible year. I mean, I don't know what my positive takeaway is, other than a couple players, and then now we possibly could lose some coaches on top of losing all the games. I don't know. That's a tough one. I guess one thing I'm happy about is, as far as football goes, was my kid got his full season in, so that was good. Playing football, it wasn't all canceled. But I think, I don't know what else we're grateful for, other than like drinking lots of red wine and watching a lot of Netflix television and staying home a lot more. Ready for the new year, right? I think at this point, I'm ready to get on to a new year and back to a sense of normalcy for sure.
For sure, Ayuk and Kinlaw were huge bright spots for this team. I mean, to have not a whole lot of draft picks going into the draft in 2020 and coming away with 2 bona fide starters.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we are, and we're going to get into all of that, because the next time we convene, the regular season will be over. The playoffs will be days away, and we'll have a full idea of the schedule of the playoffs, as well as a full idea of who the Niners' opponents for next year will be, which is always fun for me, because if 2021 gets back to normal and we're allowed to start traveling more, I'm want to get back on my road trip scene. So it's time to start breaking down the best places to eat and visit and entertain and catch a Niner game. So again, all of that will be started in the offseason, which for the Niners, unfortunately, starts after the game against Seattle. So, but anyways, Happy New Year, guys. Thanks again for joining us. It's been a fun 2020 getting the podcast started. Reimagining how we talk sports is always fun. So Happy New Year. We look forward to it again for Three Side Sportscast. Thank you. Happy New Year.